Good evening. Pursuant to Minnesota Statute Section 13D.021 in the current state of emergency to the COVID-19 pandemic, this work session of the Independent School District 279 School Board will be conducted via electronic means, internet video conferencing. Superintendent McIntyre and myself, Board Chair Kelsey Dawson-Walton, have determined that due to the health pandemic and emergency declaration, a meeting format allowing for in-person attendance by the school board and superintendent is not practical or prudent for this work session. Members of the public up to 10 are able to view this virtual meeting in person at the Educational Service Center, ESC, under CDC and MDH guidelines. The outcomes of the evening's work session tonight will be that board members will receive information and updates on concurrence with American Indian Parent Advisory Committee achievement and integration, budget review, family and community engagement, and positive behavior intervention and supports. Board members, please respond that you are present on this video conference when I call your name. Director Thomas Brooks.
Here.
Director Heather Douglas.
Here.
Director Tamara Grady.
Here.
Director Jackie Mosqueda Jones.
Here.
Director Tanya Simons.
Here.
Superintendent Corey McIntyre.
Here.
And I, Kelsey Dawson-Walton, in here. The superintendent's cabinet, other district administrators, and representatives of the American Indian Parent Advisory Committee are also logged on into this video conference. I will now ask Superintendent McIntyre to facilitate the agenda items for this evening's work session.
Thank you, Chair Dawson-Walton. Good evening, board members, and welcome to our district staff and guests. We have nearly 30 participants tonight on the meeting, including staff, parents, and community members joining us tonight. So thank you all for joining us virtually this evening. We are very excited about our agenda tonight and being able to share with the board our outstanding work and partnership on some of our highest priority areas. First, tonight we have a presentation regarding our concurrence with our American Indian Parent Advisory Committee. I want to thank our committee parent representatives for joining us tonight and for assisting in the presentation, representing all of our work together in partnership. We'll also provide you with the Achievement and Integration Plan, including goals and strategies, along with a review of the budget. And later in the evening, we are bringing you a monitoring report on our family and community engagement work that has been rapidly developing, and give you a new update on the strategic alignment of the work, and which includes examining some key elements of our successful engagement and the department's strategic direction. Our last agenda item is our monitoring report on our positive behavior interventions and supports, and really highlighting some of the innovative efforts happening, including our participation in the inaugural MDE Native Pbis cohort. Also, we have implemented Pbis in our Distance Learning Academy, and you'll see some examples of that hard work tonight as well. So with that, I'm going to quickly move us into the agenda and turn it over to Dr. Rev Hillstrom, our Director of Educational Equity, who will introduce our first agenda item this evening. Rev?
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for letting me be part of the evening, chairperson and other directors that are there. Thanks for letting me be part of the conversation with you. Ethan Naredales has been our coordinator of Indian education for quite some time. Well, actually been part of our program for quite some time, but a coordinator for last year, and we're excited about a lot of the work that he's been part of, but really under the direction of our American Indian Parent Committee. And we have several members, I believe, maybe that came. I'm not exactly sure. I can't see everybody, but I do know that our president of that committee is here, and I'll let her introduce the others, but I'll turn it over to Miss Jessica Travis to be able to take the conversation from there. She represents as chair of our American Indian Parent Committee. Ms. Travis, it's all yours.
Matakiapi, Nachawi Amachiapi, Ia Wasoha Nawak Pawashte Hamataha, Malakota Kashto. I'm Jessica Travis. Hello to everyone. I am Lakota. I come from the Cheyenne River and Standing Rock Sioux tribes. I am an enrolled citizen at Standing Rock. I am the current chair of our American Indian Parent Advisory Committee, and I have 3 kids within the school district. So I'll introduce our vice chair.
Hi, I'm Amanda Kramer. I am a vice chair. My daughter in the Osseo schools. And I will now invite or introduce the next person.
Yat Arlene Fairbanks and she my dash gives me a show now kaidina abashichin torik orange a dash check ashe a dash anale. Good evening everyone. My name is Arlene Fairbanks and I am I'm an enrolled member of Navajo tribe from Arizona, and I have one child in the school district right now, one graduate, and my youngest is in Osseo, and I am the treasurer for the PAC committee. Thank you.
Yat Arlene sa she Clarice Gilmore and Sha. My discussion is na Kate na Bush's chin, Basha Dashache Twitagwanj Dashanala. Good evening, everyone. My name is Clarice Gilmore. I am a role member of the Navajo Nation in Arizona. I currently have 5 students and children in the Osseo School District, and my youngest being in 2nd grade and the oldest going to be a senior next year.
Jessica, is that the entire group?
That is.
Awesome. Well, the floor is yours, my friend. As we know, each year, by statute, the American Indian Parent Committee has the opportunity to address the school board. And so the floor is yours. And if you have any questions or need any input from me or Ethan, we're gladly to be here to support you. But we'll be silent and let you do your thing.
All right, so the American Indian Parent Advisory Committee, or the APAC, has placed a vote of concurrence for the Osseo School District for the 2020-2021 academic school year. Although this year has been challenging for us all, we have seen the school district's Indian education program grow to provide more resources for our children. The APAC would like to acknowledge the school district's efforts in ensuring the needs of our children are being better served by increasing the number of Indian Ed staff members to a total of 4 this year. The educators in the Indian education program have facilitated the space for our children to have the opportunity to interact with each other virtually for cultural lessons, the Dakota and Ojibwe language classes, drum and dance classes, regalia making, moccasin games, guest speakers, and family activities. The Pbis program has also been a great way to engage our children in the available learning opportunities. The Indian education program has been a lifeline for some of us during this pandemic. With that being said, we'd like to continue to work with the school district to ensure that all of our children have an equitable experience that values their cultural identities. We appreciate the work the school district has done to implement more Indigenous history and teachings into the mainstream classrooms. Unfortunately, this year, even with the lessons going through the school district's curriculum review board, inaccurate lessons and videos pertaining to American Indians were again distributed into the classrooms. As lesson plans roll out into the curriculum, there is also no accountability to how these lessons are being taught or presented. There are teachers that have stepped up to engage students in the lessons while others have fallen short. These shortfalls continue to have negative impacts on our children and their success in the school system. The school district continues to fail our children when only some of our children are in classrooms that genuinely see and uplift each and every student. This has contributed to the disparity in the achievement gap among our American Indian students versus other students in the district. APAC would like to see the Policy to Pedagogy workshop reach all staff members within the school district. In addition, we would like to see a measure for accountability to ensure that what is being taught in the workshops is actually being implemented effectively into each classroom. While some educators promote equity and implement the information they learn from those workshops into their classrooms, there are others that do not. Having classrooms that are equitable helps all students to gain a better understanding of each other and our history. It is also important for our students to see themselves reflected in their educators. APAC would like to see the active recruitment and retention of American Indian teachers into the mainstream classrooms. This visibility will positively impact all students, not only our American Indian children. In addition, the APAC had previously requested that further effort be made to address the invisibility of American Indian students across the school district. The request was that all schools provide an educational demonstration, celebration, or assembly at each school for all students during the month of May, which is Minnesota American Indian Month. or in November, which is National Native American Heritage Month, or sometime throughout the academic school year. We want to make clear, though, that any demonstration, celebration, or assembly should not include a class project of making and wearing construction paper headdresses, which has been done in recent years. Lastly, the American Indian Parent Advisory Committee would like the school district to fulfill our request for policy on permitting American Indian students to be able to spiritually represent themselves by wearing an eagle feather and having their tribal flags displayed during graduation ceremonies. This falls under the American Indian Religious Freedom Act of 1978 that protects our right to the use and possession of sacred objects. We have brought this to the board multiple times before with the verbal reassurance that this request will be fulfilled, and we would like to see that finally happen. Thank you.
Thank you, President Travis. Are there other members of the committee that have a voice, or are you representing the voice collectively for the group?
That is the collective voice. So we are all here for questions and answers if anyone has any.
Wonderful. I've turned my camera off because everybody's having a glitch, so I want to be able to hear you well. So I will turn it over to Chair Dawson-Walton and go from there.
All right.
Thanks so much for your voice.
Yeah, thank you all so much. We're gonna I'm gonna turn it over to my fellow board members to see if anyone has any questions or comments, and I will start with Director Brooks.
Yes, so I just want to say thank you for coming today and presenting. I am very glad that your group is here, and thank you for the work that you do in our district. The requests today certainly sound reasonable. I think the first question that I have, and then I'll get into some of the specifics, but I was just wondering if the list that you presented today is your sort of comprehensive wish list at this time, or if there's more that you feel the district should be doing to better meet the needs of American Indian students.
I think those are the highlights.
Okay. And then the policy to pedagogy was, I think, one of the first bullet points that you mentioned. And I'm not sure who this question should be directed to, but I was wondering what our plan is or would be for the accountability ask and ensuring that it does reach every classroom and is fully implemented.
So I can't speak to the accountability measures of it, Director Brooks, but I can speak to our offerings. It's a critical point, and Ethan, please feel free to jump in here, that you experience the spaces and places in person, and that you're present in these spaces and understand the gravity of the work and of the racism that exists within our state as it relates to us as American Indian people. We have historically provided 2 trainings a year that had access to 100 people each. And we did that as part of our achievement integration dollars, if you will. That was part of our plan that we had. And I anticipate that we'll continue moving forward with that as we're able to, as COVID hopefully gets controlled and we're able to get back into those experiences. The application of that material when it goes back to the classroom or to the buildings, that's outside of my preview or, my responsibility or preview. I don't get to dictate that, but we do continue to provide support through our Indian Ed department to support teachers with that. But the accountability portions of that, I'm not able to speak to.
This might be directed maybe to Superintendent McIntyre. And this is a question that I've had not just for this American Indian Parent Advisory Council, but also DPAC, the upcoming BIPOC committee. On the district side, internally, how do we ensure that these requests are followed through on and reported back to these committees? How is the district holding itself accountable to making sure that these requests are fulfilled?
So we make sure that the key piece here is our building leaders, our principals in the schools who supervise our teachers, right? They're their direct supervisors. So we work hard to make sure the departments are working in concert with our building leaders who oversee the day-to-day operations of the schools and really are implementing the kinds of recommendations you heard tonight. So it continues to be where our focus lies and how that fits not only into individual supports to staff, but also part of the school-wide improvement plan as well. So we have mechanisms in place that can help leverage and continue to improve on the implementation. As you heard, increased efforts to broaden our scope with the training, and then there's that implementation and that accountability element to make sure it's being done with fidelity and consistently applied. So that's really kind of the process in place for that.
I'll comment here and then I'll move on, but this is a concern of mine that these requests are coming through and will continue to come through with other committees, and we as a board won't hear about it until the next time they're scheduled to present to the board. So I would like to follow up after this meeting just to find out what that process is of informing the board and this advisory committee on the progress of those requests. But again, thank you to the entire group for being here today and sharing your truth.
Thank you. Director Douglas.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I really appreciate the vote of concurrence, and I also wanted to share that I really I've been following the emails that we get regularly about the education for our American Indian students, and I've definitely seen an uptick in those opportunities. And so I'm glad to hear that you have also seen that, while there's still significant room for improvement, right? So I know that this is an area that we've continually needed to work on and improve on those opportunities, but I also appreciate the fact that we've been able to still offer some of those opportunities despite being in a pandemic setting, which has been challenging. I also share Director Brooks' concerns about feedback to the board and how will we be apprised of the progress on this, especially because I've heard President Travis and this committee many times speak about specifically the headdresses at graduation and those opportunities for students, the flags. And I know that that is a requirement, and that my understanding is that we are allowing those things, but I agree that it needs to be something more concrete, so there isn't this looming question of whether or not it will be allowed. It just needs to be in writing that this is allowed for all students who choose to do so. So I just would like to have some more specific follow-up on that, because this has been brought to the board a number of times, and I'm surprised that it is come back again, and disappointed that it's still a lingering issue, and it absolutely shouldn't be. So those are my my comments, and that's really more for administration and how are we going to move forward to make sure that these things are addressed adequately for our families. And I just want to say thank you again to President Travis and the entire team. We really appreciate hearing from you. And I would also like to offer that as things come up throughout the year, we would like to hear from you then too, not just at our yearly meeting when we discuss these things here, but anytime there's issues, we definitely want to be a part of that conversation and make sure that we're addressing things proactively versus reactively. So thank you.
Thank you. Director Grady.
Well, thank you once again for your wonderful presentation and your commitment to work on behalf of students, your own students, as well as all the American Indian students in our district. I'd like to follow up on the policy. With graduation coming up, where are we at with writing and implementing a policy to permit an eagle feather and tribal flags at commencement? I know it's coming up fast, and this seems like something we could do. Can somebody answer that question for me?
Rev, I can't see you, so I just, yeah, jump right in if you'd like.
Yep. Well, policy is determined obviously by the school board. And I'm not aware if you as a group of people have engaged in a conversation about this or not. That's not, I'm not privy to that. So I apologize. I don't know if you, where you're at currently in that process. President Travis did discuss the fact that we have procedures in place that allow for that. But there is a request to transcend procedures and get to policy. So I apologize. I'm not really quite clear on how the school board engages in policy making and what the process is connected to that. But that's what I would offer. I do know we have procedures in place, but not policy as has been requested.
Okay.
What I can offer, Director Grady, is it was actually a year ago tonight was our last meeting on this, and then a week later we went into closure, and we've had limited policy meetings over the course of last year, but we're starting to see that regular rhythm pick up now. So we can follow up with you after the meeting with more details on how, if the board wishes to move that forward.
Yeah, I would like to make a commitment to adding that to the next policy committee agenda. I'm new to the school board, so I'm catching up on how our processes are, but that is something I would like to see in our meeting in 2 weeks. My next question is, what is the district currently doing to recruit and retain American Indian teachers?
So as a system, we are committed to recruitment and retention of diverse candidates. We've had a virtual job fair this year. It's been a little more challenging being distance. We have Teachers of Color mentorship programs, so we're doing what we can to promote so that we get active engagement from our community. As you know, every single school district is trying to recruit and retain teachers of color and Indigenous teachers. So, you know, we are working hard to get that message out. We are partnering with some of our local colleges. We're partnering with St. Cloud State. We've reached out to Bethel University. We've also reached out to Metro State to try to work with them, and then as well do our Grow Your Own. So ideally, we are working with our students at our middle school and high school levels to get them interested in a teaching career, get them employed in our system in a paraprofessional ESP job. And then we have, in a number of our contracts, we have a memo of understanding that allows our teachers or our support staff to take a paid leave of absence to do their student teaching. So we just received information from Pbis that we have an opportunity for another grant. So if we are awarded that grant, we will be starting at the high school level and trying to recruit our current students. And we'll be working with Ethan and his team to work with our Indigenous students to try to get them involved in that Grow Your Own program. It's a challenge. I will readily admit that it is not easy.
And I may have seen this somewhere, but we do have the metrics showing where our progress is with this demographic of teachers, right?
Correct. Rev Hillstrom includes it in his AIM, I think, goals at the beginning of the year. We are a little over 8% teachers of color and Indigenous teachers. Across the metro, it's around 4.5%. Again, not great. We'd like to do better.
Thank you, Chair Walton. No more
Whatever
questions.
my last name is, right? Okay. All right, Director Simons.
No, again, I'd like to express appreciation for joining us tonight and sharing with us the things that are going well and the things that we keep working on. And it's really been a privilege to participate in the tribal consultations this past 2.5 years. And it's good to see where we came from with non-concurrence to where we're at today, and the degree of partnership in my observation seems to have improved greatly. So that's good news. I would concur with Director Grady on urgently adding this to our next policy meeting. It seems like something that's kind of a no-brainer. So I'd want to do that as well. I think I would like a follow-up on our next work session on these requests, on how we can implement them or have a discussion. So to keep it near in and to keep the accountability going. I do also share the previous concerns about accountability and the need for mechanisms to ensure that we're identifying quickly when there's something in the classroom that is offensive, something that is not being taught in an appropriate manner, and having the opportunity for students to be able to share that back up and track this and understand this. Because without that visibility, it's not something that can be resolved. And I think that applies to many other subject matters as well. So that's something that I have interest and concern about. But again, thank you so much. Regarding graduation, I think that we should have a report after graduation or an update to verify that that students were within their right to wear the representation of their culture and their religious freedom at graduation. So I'd like a follow-up specifically on that. So again, thank you so much. And again, you nailed it that we've been supportive of this, so we got to make it happen. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Director Mosqueda Jones.
Yeah, thank you. I would like to hear from APAC a couple of things. When you talk about the inaccurate lessons, do you have a sense of where those are coming from the teacher directly or from the district itself?
Throughout the years, both. So it's how the teacher may teach a certain lesson. This year specifically, it was a lesson that the teacher was given. It was a video that was shown, which has been issues before on videos that, you know, have been okayed through the school district to be shown within the classroom, and then really offensive and inappropriate and inaccurate in the historical view of what they're trying to portray. So both.
Yeah, that disappoints me greatly. So I'm wondering, what is our commitment to making sure that we don't end up putting out offensive lessons? Obviously we know there's no ill intent, but there's harm being done there, and how are we going to make sure that, in my estimation, correct me if I'm wrong, there are several different tribes, and so it'd be difficult to determine everything, but at the very least we could invite the families of students to look at things before they get rolled out. Is that something that we can do as a district? Corey, Michael, somebody?
What I would offer is, as we follow up with this, we can address that specifically at the next opportunity. You know, what the goal is to make sure our 1,600 teachers do this, right, across the system consistently. That's kind of, I think, where our challenge is. As we've ramped up the efforts, make sure that that implementation is done well.
Right, but definitely being given something that's inappropriate is something that we could prevent in the future. I also am wondering from APAC, if you could tell me just a little bit about your experience with the specific Pbis. I found that kind of an exciting thing that I didn't know was happening. So who wants to share what that's been like?
Director Jones, I'm sorry, Director Jackie Mosqueda Jones.
Just Jackie.
Just Jackie. Okay. Just with the situation that happened earlier this year, that has been part of the Minnesota Partnership for Collaborative Curriculum, and that was in a Schoology course. It was a 5th grade course that has since been reviewed by the LNA team and been removed. It was lesson 2.1. It was removed immediately. and it's no longer there. So just to update there and continue to, as Superintendent McIntyre stated, review the curriculum, and we certainly appreciate these collaborations and partnerships to make sure that we can meet these demands and provide a safe learning environment for our scholars.
Absolutely.
Did you have anything
And
else?
Director Mosquito-Jones, the PBIS presentation will highlight the question you just asked here in depth on our third agenda item tonight.
That's right. Okay. Yep. I saw that. Thank you. I appreciate it. That's why I was so excited about it. Everybody else said all the other things that I wanted to say. So thank you for holding us to the fire, or sorry, inappropriate. Thank you for keeping us accountable for this work. I appreciate it. And I don't have anything else right now.
Director Douglas, did you have your hand raised? Okay, you can go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to, I know that we are working on the curriculum committee, and I was wondering about, or I'm sorry, what is that? We haven't started it up yet, Corey. You know what I'm talking about, right? Do we have any members of this committee involved in that committee?
That is a great idea. I don't think we do at this point, but we haven't launched it yet because we're still in development, right? So we're very close. We're actually meeting on it tomorrow. So yeah, as Michael's laughing because he knows what time that's at. So that's a good recommendation. We will definitely see how we can make that work.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say, you know, the American Indian Parent Advisory Committee, you have really been models in terms of what a parent advisory committee or council should be, in terms of really concise with really representing your students and just how our district shows up, and it's really holds us accountable. And because of that, because of the leadership that each of you have brought forth and your students, we've been able to, I mean, since I've been on the board the last couple of years, make some progress. And though we know we have more to go, I just, I'm really grateful for that, especially as we start up our BIPOC committee and some of the other parent committees, and that as Michael continues, as we're going to learn today about how we engage our families, I just continue to look at what you've been able to accomplish, and just like hold on to. I think that you've just been like a keeper of the vision, and I really honor and respect your voice and the perseverance. And you know, even tonight, I think we all, I mean, we are so supportive, you know, of the regalia, you know, during all the time, but specifically when we talk about graduation and how important that is. So I just, I think we just made progress in this meeting tonight, so that's good. That makes me happy, and I think we're all on the same page here. So my hopes are high, and I just thank everyone for just your commitment to this, to advancing and ensuring our Native students have an educational experience that is excellent in every way. So with that, does anybody have any last comments or questions? And if not, we can move forward. All right, so the board secretary, Sherry, if you, excuse me, the board secretary, Heather, will process the required Minnesota Department of Education annual compliance vote of concurrence document and return it to Ethan for submittal to MDE. Thank you, everyone.
I cannot, we'll look at the board calendar for additional monitoring reports as follow-up as the board suggested. So we'll
thank you
to make space for those agenda items for sure. So I'll thank you to our parent reps who came and were able to participate virtually. This probably is the best spot for you to jump off the meeting tonight because we move on, but you're welcome to stay if you'd like. But I think this is the best time to transition off. So thank you so much for your time this evening and your partnership with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I think we'll turn it back to Dr. Hillstrom for our achievement and integration portion of this agenda item.
Awesome. Well, good evening again, everyone. Not too often I get to talk to you twice in one night, so that's a good thing. Let's see here. Can you see the presentation that I put up? Is that available?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I'm going to be focusing on that. Our outcomes for tonight are pretty straightforward. We're looking forward just our review of our AIM, our Achievement Integration Minnesota Plan 2020 through 2023, and identifying our current budget realities for next year, what that looks like, and is this year. So I'm going to jump right into the budget pieces. For those of you who are familiar with this, you'll see that the Achievement Integration budget from this year to next year is going down, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But the Achievement Integration budget is required to function on this idea of 80-20-10, and we know we add that up, that's more than 100%. But basically the idea is 80% of the budget must be what is referred to as direct services to students. 20%, up to 20% could be for professional development, and up to 10% could be for administrative or indirect cost. So you can see how the budget breaks down this year at 81.33% for direct services, professional development at 11% roughly, and admin at 7.65. Next year, we're going to have a comparative budget, even though it's going down as it relates to percentages. You can see that they're very, very close. Professional development costs or expenditures are going down. Part of that's connected to the budget that you just passed and some of the adjustments that we've made to be able to support the overall budget. If you look at the overall programming and budget changes, next year, one of the things that we're going to continue to do in the Achievement Integration Plan and our own DOE's department plan, our family engagement work has been critical. And this year, we made some adjustment with some of our carryover from last year and other budget changes to be able to support an equity specialist within the FACE department. And next year, we're going to pick up that entire position through the Achievement Integration Plan to continue to support our family engagement work as we work hand in fist together, and excited to partner with Vanessa and her crew as they continue to lead that work forward. Last year's budget was just a little over $5 million. This year's budget's going to be a little under $5 million, which is going to be a total of about $55,000 difference in our bottom line. The Achievement Integration Plan that was written and picked up by MDE has these 5 goals, and you can see them listed here. This collaborative process with Northwest Integrated School District to address the proficiency gap for our American Indian students and students of color for both math and reading, and to increase, goal number 4 is to increase American Indian student attendance, which under Ethan's leadership, you'll hear more about the Pbis work that he and Jillian and the other members of our team have done and continue to move forward. And you did hear Ms. Anderson speak to some of our efforts to really support our diverse workforce, recruitment and retention efforts. Those are the 5 goals that are listed in the plan. And to support that, it's really 13 basic strategies that, if you're familiar with the document, you can find it. If you're not, on our website, but it's over 120 pages. So obviously I'm not going to take you through all of that, but most of you have seen it and are aware of it. Different strategies are connected to that work, and these serve as a menu of possible opportunities. The Achievement Integration budget is arguably the most legislated budget, grant budget at least, within our offerings or our funding offerings in our system, and it's very prescriptive of what can be done, and if it's not listed in the plan, funds cannot be supported for it. So we have a very, last I heard, we actually have the most robust plan in the state. with the greatest menu items in a very focused effort. So we've been commended by MDE for that level of work, and I'm proud to have been part of it. So that is the quick overview, and I'm glad to stop sharing and answer any questions that you may have for me, so that we can move forward in your evening. So back to you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I will start with Director Simons.
I don't have any questions. That was very helpful to understand. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Director Grady.
Thank you for your work and your commitment to equity. I am wondering, as we are moving through and out of the pandemic and sort of getting realigned with our equity commitment, how your department and your process will align with the ECAP process for strategic planning that is also aligned to our board strategy process.
Sure. Thank you for the question. As you know, Director Grady, from being involved with the ECAP process, multiple members of my team have been involved with it from its inception and will continue to be involved with it. I'm not quite sure exactly how our strategic plan efforts will move it forward with members of my department and which members will be involved in it, as that's emerging as we work with Teamworks and we get more direction about what those next steps will look like. I've heard through conversations with my supervisor and Lisa Hartman that there has been really sincere crosswalks between the two organizations to ensure that that work will move forward and that the radical depth of work that's got into this ECAP will lead our process and guide our process. So I'm excited to see that come to fruition and fully be utilized, because it is an incredibly heavy lift, that ECAP process. There are literally thousands of human hours spent in that work, and I'm thrilled to see it have an impact on our strategic plan. So I'm quite confident it will. I can't tell you exactly what that will look like, as that knowledge is emerging, if you will. Your questions were compounded, so I may have missed one. Was there something I didn't address?
No, well, I think one of the more valuable lessons that I have learned going through the ECAP process is not just a look at unfavorable test outcomes of particular minority communities and think about racism more broadly, more systemically, as how it relates to what we as a community are doing for all of our kids and all of our minoritized communities, including our Vietnamese and our Hmong community and our LGBTQ community. So I'm wondering how your process can or cannot incorporate the totality of systemic issues when it comes to barriers for participation for many of our students.
Yeah, so let me be frank. The Achievement Integration Plan is designed to fund specifically achievement and or integration for racially isolated communities and socioeconomic, low socioeconomic groups, right? And that's what funds my entire department. There are Indian education dollars specifically for Indian Ed as well, and there's Title III dollars for EL, but that's the funding basis. For the general equity work you're referring to, the limitations of that grant dictate how we function. So I think with the Hmong and the Vietnamese groups, they fall within that categorization. But it's going to be critically important as we get into this next strategic plan to understand that education, the system that we're operating, is basically a historically white institution designed by and for the dominant narrative group, the colonial population. And so for us to do something different, we're going to have to interrupt that. And we're going to have to, I've kind of come up with what my team calls a revism. We're going to continue to minoritize unless we prioritize. And that's going to be critical. As it relates to your question around LGBTQ plus, my department is not designed to address those issues. Though we're passionate and care about that, the funding source that's at play does not afford us the opportunity to do that fully. All right. So I couldn't answer a comprehensive answer to that. I know that we look at the intersectionality of social identities, and that is part of our work that's appropriate, but exclusively as it would relate to LGBTQ questions, that would not fall within the guidelines of the Achievement Integration Plan. That's why you're not seeing it listed as a strategy, if you will.
Director Grady, if I may offer, and just from a more technical aspect, and certainly not going to be a solution to the totality of the questions that you asked, but as part of the ECAP process, of the EOSP process, as you're astutely aware, part of it is that we need to start developing statements of inequities. We've also had some conversations around vision cards. So as we begin to develop and curate our statements of inequities a bit more throughout our system, we then would be able to add those to our vision card statements and to make sure that our goal orientation is appropriate and certainly situated and centers equity and outcomes for our scholars that most frequently are on the margins of consideration.
Okay, thank you both for that explanation. I just look forward to merging this ECAP process into our district fully with a full commitment, and it seems like funding might be one of those gaps that we're going to have to talk about at a later date. Thank you.
Okay, Director Mosqueda Jones.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm not sure that I have specific questions about this presentation. I'm looking forward to how the ECAP process and the strategic directions that we are still, working through will all work together to change some of these kind of directions on how we're tackling some of the issues, these big, huge issues that we've been addressing. So I don't really have any questions right now about the presentation.
Okay.
Director, I don't know if that was a question, but I can just speak to the timelines about the crosswalks that we're certainly intentionally doing. And we've almost slowed the process to make sure that we have the critical data points necessary as we engage our teamwork strategic planning process. We have a collaborative meeting scheduled for May 20th with our teamworks team and then also our ECAP team to have a roundtable discussion, and we begin to make meaning of some of the data and then begin to develop some strategies around the statements of inequity. So that's kind of the way that we're looking at it. And to Director Grady's point, we may have to reallocate and look at things differently, but then we'll begin to make some meeting and name some of our strategic planning thereafter.
Michael, if I may, I've never been more excited than I was after hearing the intentional, dedicated focus of the conversation we had today amongst a couple of leaders to ensure that this does not get dropped. I am confident in Michael's leadership to just insist upon it. And so I'm excited. What we as a collective do with it after that, I don't know. But I am sure that it will be forward and present in our conversations. And how as we as a community prioritize where our consciousness is at, where does our conviction land, and what our commitments will be. I can't speak to that. But I am quite confident that from the process that it will be brought forward with integrity.
And Director Mosqueda Jones, I can add, as I shared with the board in a recent update, our goal is to have all these aligned and in place by mid-July so that we are positioned to roll this out for the start of next school year. The ECAP process is going to take us into May. So we have a May to July window to do the, as we've already begun, but that analysis process leads us through, near the end of May. And then when it comes to mission, vision, core values, strategic directions, and strategic initiatives, getting all those things in alignment with the equity-oriented strategic planning process by midsummer, so that we're positioned as we begin to ramp up the start of the school year in August. We have all those things in place with the new vision and plan in place to move forward.
Yeah, I think what I'm getting at is it's kind of when you look at the list on the presentation of let me look at, we call it the plan strategies. You know, there's some very specific things on there, and I look at all the things that we're looking at right now together, and I can just see the pieces starting to come together. And so that's kind of, you know, exciting to see that kind of comprehensive view of how are the magnet schools, you know, working with this, how is, you know, this particular, all the changes with the family and community engagement. So that's, I guess, was where I was going with that. So thank you for clarifying it.
All right, thank you. Director Brooks.
Yes. One sort of quick question for Rev. I was wondering if you could maybe highlight some of the cuts you had to make to the budget and sort of what that entails. I think it's always helpful to know the direct impact of some of the budget decisions that we have to make as a board.
Yes, thank you. I'm glad to do that, Director Brooks. The big two, there were two main areas that were directly attached to the achievement integration budget. One was a shared cost from the general fund for the director position, which I currently hold. It was 1/10 of it, I believe, was carried over from the general budget and consumed or absorbed by the achievement integration budget. And then there was a portion of the Indian Ed coordinator that had historically been carried by the general funds that had been moved over. That the Indian Ed one was a little bit easier to do because as we do our numbers and are getting our counts correctly, our revenue, right, connected to that has gone up, right? So that was an easier one. But the revenue, as you can see, went down with the achievement integration budget this year. And of course, that's connected to attendance and all of those things as well. But those were Ron, if I'm mistaken, please let me know, but I believe I'm speaking accurately to that. And that was the decisions that were put before you as a board.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, it totaled about $25,000. So it wasn't, you know, a huge dollar amount, but it was when you lost $55,000, now you lost another 25, right? Or 20 plus. So.
Thank you. No additional questions. I would just say that I'm looking forward to seeing the progress with some of these plan strategies. I know that Michael Lehan mentioned the vision cards that are coming, you know, some of the scorecards. So looking to see some of the progress on this, but thank you for your work and for a very clear presentation today.
Thank you for your kind words and your leadership. Thank you. Well done.
Director Douglas.
I do not have any questions at this time. Thank you.
Yeah, I would just say, I mean, I think we know exactly, you know, how the decisions were lie around the budget. So, you know, we don't need an explanation on that. I think what we really need an explanation on and just understanding how, you know, I don't think we could be any more clear as a board of where we stand and where our priorities are right now. And especially given this pandemic that we've just been through, all of us, and the impact it's had on all of our students, but exacerbated the disparities clearly. And so I don't think we could be any more clear, like I said, again, as a board, where we stand and where we've been focusing priority work. And this whole year and a half, what we've been able to do with the staff and with our community is really shift how we're looking at our budget and our priorities, and making sure we're staying true to what we said around the strategic plan and ECAP, and ultimately looking at that world's best workforce report. That's the one that I think, you know, every year just really puts us, kind of gives us a reality check of things. So, and I know that Michael, you know, really did a nice job at that when we were looking at that, and like kind of tie and marry kind of like what we mean by, you know, closing gaps here, and what, and kind of trying to make that more operational instead of kind of theoretical in theory. So anyway, so I think we are really committed to this work and for the long term, not just now, but for the long haul, especially as we go into this year. And I do look forward to it. So thank you so much. And I will hand it back over to you, Superintendent McIntyre.
Yeah, I'd like to echo a couple things you said, Chair Dawson-Walton. Thank you very much. I do want to commend our team's efforts around the ECAP process this year, doing it virtually, redesigning how it gets done while we've been juggling so many other things, and to try to keep this on target, on time, and the ability to align it with our overall strategic plan efforts with Teamworks that we've been adding sessions to make sure we get done through the spring. So I want to just echo your support for the team, and I know Director Grady's a part of that as well. So we are excited about the potential to get this merged and integrated and aligned into one master strategic plan. And what we're hearing is we're one of the first districts to try to merge these two efforts into one really excellent vision and mission and plan moving forward that really puts into action all the things that all of you as board members set for us as direction, right? So making those actionable things, and it's going to be a multi-year, multifaceted effort. So thank you for supporting that. And Rev, thank you so much to you and your efforts around. I know there's lots of technical requirements around this achievement integration plan through the state of Minnesota. And I need to highlight that because I've lived that before myself. There is a lot of details to attend to on this throughout the course of the year. You make it feel kind of simple, and that's a nice work because it's a 100-page plus document, and we appreciate all your extra efforts around this. And I know you work with multiple departments to make it happen, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, there's a lot of folks, so I'm not taking credit for all of that, that's for sure, but thank you.
Yep. Well, as we transition to our next agenda item, thank you, board members. We have a lot of follow-up items here that I'll articulate back with the board so you can get a sense of timeline for all those things we just covered in the last hour. We are excited about introducing our next phase of work with our family and community engagement plan. A lot has happened since your last progress report, so we're going to get right to it. I'll introduce Michael Lehan, Assistant Superintendent of Equity and Achievement, to introduce our new team.
Perfect. Thank you, Superintendent McIntyre. Ms. Gill, I invite you to begin to pull up the presentation. But before we get started, I certainly want to celebrate, as yesterday was International Women's Day, and so I just honor and celebrate the dynamic leadership that we have on this board. I appreciate, and obviously the theme was choose to challenge. So I just appreciate your voices, each of you, and the manner in which you challenge us and push us towards thinking differently and so forth. So just would be remiss if I didn't celebrate and acknowledge the dynamic leadership that each of you offer. School board members, Superintendent McIntyre, fellow cabinet members, and members of the viewing audience, good evening. With me this evening, I have Vanessa Gill, Coordinator of Family and Community Engagement, and Kavan Whitlock, Equity Specialist in the Department of Family and Community Engagement. Before we get started, I wanted to offer a bit of a roadmap regarding the FACE Department's conceptual origin. Patrick Smith and Brian Severson Hall began this journey based on direction from the school board. Brian and I had the opportunity to offer a presentation to the board in June. As many of you remember, Brian and me visited with many of you to understand your working definition of engagement. And I will add that Director Simons offered us an excellent PowerPoint encapsulating her thinking frame in anticipation for our meeting. So thank you for that. In August, we hosted a family and community engagement planning team to learn more about our district's existing practices comprised of principals, business managers, and others. We recognized the demand and took action. As such, we were able to realign resources and build out our family and community engagement department. Finally, engagement is equity work. As such, the pursuit of equity is a purposeful disposition requiring deep introspection, firm resolve, and commitment in action. We seek to create and hold space so that our understanding of truth is challenged, expanded, and ever evolving because our environment offers deliberate discourse. And as our core values tell us, Better decisions emerge when diverse perspectives are intentionally included in the collaborative process. With that, I introduce to you Coordinator Vanessa Gill.
Thank you for that introduction, Michael, and good evening, everyone. I am Vanessa Gill, the FACE coordinator. Excited to be here with you all, and I do have my colleague with me, and I'll have her jump on and introduce herself before we jump in.
Good evening. I'm Kavan Whitlock. I'm the FACE Equity Specialist, so it is an awesome opportunity and honor to be here this evening.
All right, so as we jump right in, we want to just let you know that through this presentation, you all will have the opportunity really to see the alignment of the FACE department's work and the district's strategic directions, as well as we'll be able to paint a clear picture of what engagement looks like right now. And we'll start sort of on a larger scale, what it looks like in the state of Minnesota and what we're doing around engagement, as well as some of our neighboring districts. And then we'll dive deeper into what is happening right now in Osseo area schools. And then we'll conclude really with laying out what our strategic directions are thus far for the FACE department. And so starting with the strategic plan alignment, really this is you all's work, right? Come on, you can go ahead to the next slide. So this work is really what you all have been doing, right? We see the strategic directions and the beliefs that you all have already established for the district. And we know there's alignment, right? And really determining how we're shaping our scholars' experiences and knowing that their experience within the school building and the district really is going to shape that academic experience. And we know that when our scholars have a more positive experience in the classroom and in our schools, their families have a more positive experience with us as a district. So we know that's crucial right now as we're doing this work, as well as looking at ways to partner, right? Partner and collaborate with our parents and do that in a more intentional way and really collaborating and inviting them into that decision-making process in a more intentional way. And then overall, looking at how are we going to implement district-wide supports that really enhance our overall experience for our scholars and their families. In addition to this, we know you also have the resolution on George Floyd and systematic racism. And so it really is another point to say now is the time, right, to really look at how we're shaping our experience for our scholars and their families and looking at how important that is and crucial that is to our scholars' success, as well as looking at how we're partnering with our community, right? We know we're a large district and there's lots of communities and neighborhoods that we have connections with and we're in proximity to. And so how are we intentionally partnering, collaborating with them to ensure that we're serving all of our scholars equitably? And so we're going to start looking at what I've identified in our site improvement plans. And so I've had the opportunity to review them. And this is the second year where there has been an engagement component. And so what I've really had the opportunity to notice were some of the themes showing up in some of our sites. And as you can see on the right, there's our traditional themes of engagement happening at some of the sites. There's the PTO impact activities taking place. There's the cultural events and celebrations happening at the sites. There's the turkey bingo, the family nights, and those experiences. And in those conversations, I've also been able to identify that there's a desire to go deeper with our families and our scholars, to look at how we can personalize our supports for them, how we can build more intentional partnerships, right? And as we look at those partnerships, how do we really collaborate with our parents, right? Invite them in, welcome their voice as we're implementing new strategies. And another theme that I've identified also is there's lots of cultural experiences happening at our sites. And one of the counterparts to that is they're very and specific to those cultures. And the participants are really cultural specific, right? So there's not a lot of other individuals outside of those cultures participating and joining. So really looking at ways we can provide some intentional intercultural engagement opportunities where we give the opportunity for our families to share, right, about their traditions, share about their culture, and do that in a prideful way, but also be respectful in a space where the community is willing to learn, right, and listen and learn about that culture. And so another underlying tone has really been, how do we do this in the pandemic, right? How do we adapt? How do we shift everything we've done in person and large groups and things like that to a space where we're remote, right? And how do we adapt in and out of both of those spaces? So we know as engagement is happening, there's really a need to identify a set of collective norms that we can deploy across the district to really enhance the experience for our scholars and their families. And so now we're going to dive a little bit deeper into what engagement looks like in some of the current models and practices, starting from a larger scale. And we've had the opportunity to participate in the MDE engagement series. And here you'll see the themes for each of those sessions. And actually that last bullet point is actually happening next week. But we've had the opportunity to engage in these sessions and really tap into these tools, right? These have been wonderful tools and resources as we begin to look at engagement as a whole for the district and implementing new strategies district-wide. And so they provide the opportunity not only to really explore these tools, but do some case study work in the sessions and look at what this looks like being implemented into a potential case at a different site. And then going a step further, how do we then begin to plan for OSSEO area schools, right, within our individual districts? So we've had those phases of opportunities within these series. In addition to this, we've had the opportunity to connect and collaborate with individuals across the state that are doing this work. It's been a wonderful opportunity to hear what's happening in Rochester or what's happening in Duluth, right, or Robbinsdale. And so it's been a great opportunity just to hear what they are doing and hear how they're adapting to COVID and really shaping and personalizing their engagement strategies. So now we're going to dive a little bit deeper and look at some of our neighboring districts. So we have Minneapolis Public Schools and St. Paul Public Schools. And St. Paul Public Schools has the Office of Family Engagement and Community Partnerships. Minneapolis has the Office of Student and Family and Community Engagement. And so there are some overlaps in what they're offering, right? And so what they've been able to really identify is like ways to allow our families to consult with the district, whether it's at a site council level, advisory council level, or if it's at a district-wide level. So allowing those opportunities where families' voices are sought out and heard and really engaged in a meaningful way. They also have educational opportunities. So there is, in St. Paul, there's the Parent Academy. In Minneapolis, it's CPAO, Connecting Parents to Educational Opportunities. And these are really skill-based programs that really enhance parenting tips, educational tips that they can give to their parents that are in their districts. And one thing I'll highlight about Minneapolis, with their CPAO program, they do have site-specific CPAO groups. And in addition to that, they have culture-specific ones where the curriculum is delivered in that native language for those families. So there's also that opportunity happening. And then we have the family liaison role. And this is really thinking about advocates in our buildings, people that are embedded in our systems that know how to navigate it. They know the ins and out of our school buildings and larger district system, but they're an advocate on behalf of the parent and supporting them to ensure that the scholar and family is successful in navigating the larger school system. The last two pieces that I'll highlight in Minneapolis Public Schools are their Family Resource Center and their full service schools. So the Family Resource Center is located in Anderson in South Minneapolis. And this is really inside the school building. And it's a place where families can do intakes as they're coming into the system. They can also connect to resources. They are able to connect to resources on hand, but also partners that are outside of the school. And in addition to that, it's also a space where families have ownership of the space. I had the opportunity of visiting, and there was a group of moms. Come to find out, every Tuesday they do a different class. They rotate the theme every 6 to 8 weeks, and they choose and teach the topic. And so it's really a community for the parents with inside that larger school community. And it's really a safe space for them where they feel comfortable moving in and out of, which is really a beautiful thing to see. And then the Full Service Schools Initiative, I had the opportunity to be a part of this in my last role. And so there are 3 sites currently in Minneapolis Public Schools, but Full Service Schools is really a place, but also a set of partnerships. So essentially a hub where we're able to, well, the Full Service School is able to really provide those on-hand resources and supports to families, whether they're mental health supports, whether they're housing supports, food supports. They find those on hand inside the school building. And those inside those full service schools, there is a family resource room that is available to not only the families and scholars, but those staff in that building, as well as the larger neighborhood and community. And so right here, you'll see key roles that we've just pulled out to highlight from some of these 2 districts. And there's 3 that I want to highlight, starting with that cultural specialist, which is really about having individuals that are from our communities that we're serving, individuals that may speak the native language of our families and scholars. They may live in the neighborhood, but they have that added awareness and knowledge of the cultures and communities that we're serving. And then that Project Reach coordinator is an individual that focuses on scholars as they're re-entering the education system. So how do we support and engage them to ensure that they now are going to be successful in navigating the system? And the last role that I'll highlight is that engagement education outreach specialist. And this is actually Minneapolis Public Schools. And these individuals are really embedded and engaged in the district, right, on a district-wide level, but at individual sites, serving families, having those relationships, and then that broader community. So they have both sides of the system, right? They're able to maneuver within the district, but then outside. So they're also a bridge for the district as they're beginning to connect and build that relationship outside the district. And so I want to highlight a few strategic collaborations that we've already been able to establish. And there's multiple departments within our system and closely connected to our system that are doing this work right now. And so we know that data assessment is looking at measuring engagement. What has that looked like this past year? How have our scholars engaged, and what are families' questions and some of the needs that are developing? So we know that's been an ongoing evaluation that's taking place. And then I've also had the opportunity to connect with DPAC and consult with them as they were making their student services committee is developing their recommendation to the school board. And they also see a need for how do we strengthen engagement across the district. And then there's focusing on new immigrant families. So the multilingual and English learner programs are really looking at how do we engage families that are new to the country and new to our system? How do we ensure that they have all the necessary supports to be successful navigating the system and having their scholar be successful in the classroom? In addition to that, there's also that technology piece for our multilingual and English learner families. How do we ensure that they understand the technology, are able to use it and really use it successfully to ensure their scholar is successful, whether we're in an in-person learning model or distance or hybrid learning model. And lastly, the community engagement team has been a really great connection just to see all the other individuals that are within the district and connected in that team, but also around the communities surrounding our schools. And so now on to our mission delivery point. Where are we going with this work? And I'll start by highlighting some of the positions that we've identified. And so we have the equity specialist and the community liaison. And the equity specialist is really focused on understanding our families' experience within our system and understanding their experience as well as the barriers they're going to face and actively working to remove those barriers so they can better maneuver through our system and be more successful. They also have a pulse for the cultures within our communities we're serving, right? What's happening with those cultures, what events are coming up, what holidays and celebrations to ensure that not only are we aware of them, we're properly educated and we're supporting them in a very respectful and intentional way. And then we have the cultural liaison, and this really is an individual that has knowledge of all of our sites as well as the surrounding community, and they're able to really respond when things are taking place in our community, in our neighborhood, and educate the district on what's taking place and support and responding in a very respectful and intentional way. They're also connected. They have the relationships within the community. They're a bridge between the district and some of our community organizations, some of the elders, maybe churches that are nearby us that we can really begin to collaborate and be in partnership with. All right, and the last position that I'll highlight is the parent ambassador. And this was really important to us to have a parent with us at the planning phase of all of the strategies that are taking place within the FACE department. It's really critical to ensure that we center our work around our scholars and our families and ensure that we have parent voice involved in the entire process. It's really important to have their voice there as we're developing strategies and consult with them and have their input. This is also a way for us to model what new partnership can look like within our individual sites. How do we invite families and their parents and caregivers in to that planning phase as we're making new changes and initiatives within our specific sites and then district as a whole. So with that being said, I'm going to hand it off to Kavan and she'll tell you a little bit about our departmental goals.
Good evening again. So yes, our departmental goals. So we've identified 4 key indicators that we can strive to reach as a district as we continue to strengthen our engagement practices to ensure that we're serving all of our scholars and families both intentionally and authentically. So to start with communication. So we feel that, the family should determine the best mode of communication. We also feel it's important that the information is easily shared and received from the family. And then lastly, the family is informed and trained, on all translation services and tools. For the safe and welcoming environment, we want to ensure that our buildings and classrooms are a safe space for our scholars and families and that we're intentionally partnering with the community to serve all of our families. The next is the parent voice and advocacy. Excuse me, so that's intentionally partnering with our parents and or caregivers in the education process to value them as the experts of their child. And then for scholar voice, that's being really crucial that our staff is consistently including scholar voice and input in decision-making processes. For the desired lived experience, so the 4 indicators of success are going to shape the desired lived experience for our scholars and families as they continue to navigate through the Osseo Area School District. When we successfully integrate them into our practices, we're able to then carry out our district's mission. So measuring impact. So we feel that meeting our 4 goals that we've went into depth just previously are going to definitely shape and indicate our impact. And then the approach. So far we've identified in creating a couple of approaches. That one of those is creating a logic model, a family and community engagement logic model. And then the next is continuing to collaborate and partner with data and assessment as they will inform us of our evaluation methods. And then looking ahead. So this has come up a few times. So the RISE committee, that's radically investing in scholars' excellence. So the RISE committee is comprised of parents and or caregivers, as well as staff of our BIPOC communities, along with the FACE department. And so the committee was formed as a direct result of the resolution from last summer to ensure that we're elevating the voices of our BIPOC communities, as well as establishing a committee that gives them the power to address the structural and racial inequity within the district. So the purpose. What's the purpose of RISE? So we found that it would be a safe space where the members can voice their concerns, but then also examine the policies and procedures and practices to ensure that us as a district are equitably serving all of our communities. And for summer engagement, so as we look ahead into summer, we'll use pulse data to inform us as we begin to establish engagement opportunities for our scholars and families in the surrounding communities. So what we hope you all were able to take away this evening was a clearer picture of our strategic alignment for the FACE initiative, a deepened understanding of current engagement models and practices, heightened awareness of where Osseo area schools are at in the engagement process, and then just clarity on the FACE department's strategic direction. And I will open the floor to any questions or comments.
All right, excellent. Thank you so much. I will start with Director Grady.
Thank you so much for your commitment to family engagement. I really think it is instrumental to our entire success. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Oh, I just couldn't hear myself. I keep putting the button up against my desk. My apologies. Thank you for your work. I feel like community engagement is really critical as we move through this time period with our district. And I am wondering what your next steps are for action.
Sorry, couldn't find the mute button. So our immediate next steps really involve us taking time. Well, one, that RISE committee is something that we're looking to launch very soon and recruiting members for that and starting those conversations. And then also looking at better completing, actually connecting with the remainder of our sites as they're reviewing their SIP goals. That's another part of our next steps. And then looking at ahead to summer engagement, what opportunities can we provide for our scholars and our families? In addition to that, we will also be expanding the FACE team as we move into the summer as well.
Thank you.
All right, Director Simons.
So yes, this is a very helpful, comprehensive update and approach. I think as you continue to refine the specific tactics and timeline, I'd definitely be interested in an update so we can see what's being implemented when, so we can watch for some of those things to come, and then be checking in on the measures of success. So I appreciate that there's a strong desire to be measuring the outcomes and identifying what we want those outcomes to be. So I think like many of our other topics, being able to close the loop back in terms of what's being implemented when, and what are we seeing against those measures and benchmarks as they become more established. So thank you. This has been something that we've been talking about for a couple of years now. And so it's really good to see this come together at this point, and really seeking to make a differential impact in partnership with our parents to support the entire learning experience of our scholars. So thank you so much.
All right, Director Brooks.
Yes. Yeah, so Vanessa, I think this is my third time getting to hear a presentation from you, and I always look forward to it. Kavan, it's really nice to meet you virtually today. Thank you both for the work that you do. I think community engagement work is so critical to our work in equity. I think data is an important indicator of the inequities and specific disparities in our district, but it's also really important to, and you highlighted this, to know our family stories and to actually see those stories change over time. So I am looking forward to a lot of the strategies that you're looking to implement. I don't know who gets credit for RISE, but great job with the name. I know that I knew that we were coming up with a new name, but I like what you came up with. So great job there. I want to go back to one of the original slides, and we don't actually have to go back, but it kind of talked about, it highlighted the differences between some of the site community engagement or parent engagement events versus some of the deeper ways to engage with the community. And I thought that was actually really important. I think it's, I think fundraising and having that family and parent interaction on a site level is really important. But I think it's also, I think, a whole nother thing to create environments where our parents, caregivers, and scholars can actually take something away from an interaction with the district that helps to improve their experience in the classroom or their day-to-day at home. And I was wondering if you could, one of you could maybe talk through some of the differences and priorities between community engagement at the district level versus some of the differences you're seeing in community engagement priorities from, far east in Brooklyn Park to far west in Maple Grove.
So some of the differences that I've noticed thus far are a lot of, and I feel like you broke that down, east side, west side of the district. Is that correct? Yeah, just to be sure. So what I've noticed really a lot of the east side is how do we connect back with our families? How do we get them back involved in maybe the parent nights, or how do we find ways to involve them in the new engagement plans that are included in Title I activities? So really, how do they establish more stronger relationships with the families? I know a lot of their conversations and things took place in passing, right? As they saw the families and parents every day. And so now when that didn't take place for the majority of the year, now they're sort of in the springtime starting at square one, where they're able to see families and really bridge those connections to invite them into maybe a decision-making process, or invite them to join an activity or an engagement experience. And so then in comparison to the west side, a lot of experiences have been around, I'll also highlight this piece of how do we support our families that are non-English speakers, right? How do we make sure they are still connected with us? And how do we do that in a way that's easily accessible to them, right? Instead of always forcing our families to come to us, how do we go to them to make that possible? And then in comparison on that west side of the district, there's a lot of different, how do we hold our larger events, right? How do we do those experiences and bring them to the virtual space? How do we still hold these events where we've had such a strong community? How do we do that with COVID? How do we adapt our practices? They've had a lot of established practices, I've noticed. It's just how do we adapt them and make them COVID safe, right? And then how do we reach our BIPOC communities that may not be participating in these experiences?
Thank you. I know that was a big question, so I'll move on to the next board member, but thank you.
Thank you, Director Douglas.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to comment on how great this presentation was. I am really impressed with the inclusiveness and thoughtful consideration of the many groups of people that need to be involved in this conversation. I think that this has been a very long time coming, and I'm really excited to see it finally coming to fruition. And I just can't say enough about how great this work is and how excited I am to see it in real time and actually happening. I'm looking forward to the increased connection with our community. I know that we've had several things come up throughout the last year specifically related to COVID that have been really divisive within our community that I'm hoping that we can really reconcile those things and bring our community back in and engaged, because we know that students who have engaged families perform better academically, and our ultimate goal is academic success for all students. And so that's my highest priority, is making sure that we're doing everything that we can to ensure that all students receive a high quality education in an environment that's suitable for them and their families. So I'm just really excited about the work and really impressed with the thoroughness of this presentation. And I can see that it's been brought forward with extreme thoughtfulness and intention to do right by our families and our community. So I just wanted to really express my gratitude for that. And I don't have any questions at this time. I'm just, I would echo several of the comments that other board members have made, particularly in regards to keeping this front and center and full circle, following up and having this be a regular part of our conversation, so we know exactly where we are in the process as board members, and so our community knows where we are in this process. And I know that, or I believe you would be excited to continue to share that information with us and give us regular updates. So I just would encourage Superintendent McIntyre to find a way to keep us in the loop on a regular basis on that information going forward. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Director Mosqueda Jones.
So I wanted to, even though you've been here a while, Vanessa, I wanted to welcome you to the district because I haven't met you yet. And Kavan, welcome as well. I appreciate you two very much so, as a licensed parent educator and someone who's researched this topic extensively, almost to a PhD level. And so I'm geeking out right now. I just have to tell you, I'm very excited about the directions that you're going. We know that when we can work and walk in partnership with our families, that we will be more successful as educators of children. We also know that parents are the best and first educators of their students. I also want to put in the space that I'm sure resonates from what I feel from you already, is that we need to make sure that we're looking at what our definition of engagement is and what that looks like, and that it is, very different for every single family, and just because they're not in the building does not mean that they're not highly engaged. I speak from personal experience as a teacher as well on that. I also want to echo radically investing in scholars excellence. Beautiful, love that name. And then, the other thing I wanted to say is, and I imagine that I'm saying this to like-minded people, is, in my researching with Dr. Khalifa and his work on really, trying to attack the gap that that we call it the opportunity gap, is that true engagement with the community and involving them in the decision-making process, and how this is truly one of the ways that we're going to be able to do that. So I can't even tell you how excited I am. My one question is, I started out my career in school districts in Osseo as a parent educator in the community education department. And so I'm wondering how the FACE department is collaborating or working with ECFE, particularly since we have a group of, knowledgeable parent educators who are working with our scholars in the very beginning of their career in our district.
So collaborating with the ECFE parents, that's actually hasn't started yet, but thank you for mentioning that, to make sure that we're including all components, because I know that ECFE component usually gets missed and overlooked when we think of engagement. So that is something that's on our radar that we will be able to include as we're moving further with our strategies.
Director Mosqueda Jones, one of the things you mentioned, the opportunity gap. One of the things that we've talked about as a FACE department is this notion of receivement gap. How have we received and how have we not received as a result of COVID or our communication styles or whatever the case might be? So this opportunity gap certainly happens within the schools and system, but as we think about a holistic approach, we're beginning to unpack this notion of a receivement gap, and where are gaps in receiving information, receiving belief, receiving affirmations, receiving notes of brilliance, and then how can we begin to frame our actions around this notion of receivement?
Thank you for that.
Well, I just want to say, I feel like we went from a concept of talking about it, about engagement, family engagement, student engagement, to making it really tangible. And I think Vanessa and Kavan, you've made some major gains here. I mean, especially given this year. I mean, to keep this going and moving this work along is really incredible. And I just think, like, I echo what everyone else said, the thought that's gone into this. I mean, just looking at other districts, looking at, model practices, what's worked, what hasn't worked. I mean, that's so important, so to bring us kind of the best of the best of, I think with Director Douglas, I totally agree. We've been pretty divided as a school district community, and I think at the heart of it is, how are we bringing our families together and our scholars together, because we know we have kind of all the ingredients as a district to really excel at so many things. And so I'm just so excited for this work. I think that I love it because I think it takes the quantitative data that we don't have a shortage of at all in this district, with the qualitative and that kind of that human impact. And I think that when we look at metrics, I'll be really interested to see what you come up with, because I think it's hard when it comes to engagement, because first of all, it's about trust, and it's hard to measure trust, and it's hard. And then we have a lot of, I think this will all be building trust in our communities. And so I just, I think it's going to take a little time, because, engagement is not, short term, it's super long term. It's about the relationships. But I'm I'm just super duper excited. I think you're not going to have any problem getting people involved in the Rise. I don't know how you're probably going to even, I don't know what the process looks like for that, but I mean, I think you're going to have a lot of really from all across the district, I mean, some really great representation. And so that's exciting. So just that's excellent work. Thank you so much, all of you.
Chair Dawson, I see Director Simons has her hand up, I think, before I do my comments, or now maybe Director Brooks. I can't tell.
Oh, both. Oh, you both do. Sorry, I didn't see that. Director Simons. You're on mute. You're on mute.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Yeah, through the conversation and Kelsey, what you just mentioned too had sparked a question/comment, which was cross-district collaboration. So at our listening sessions, we heard a lot of heart and desire from the parent communities to want to cross-collaborate and engage. So as we think about, reaching out, specifically and to unique needs, bringing people together to cross-collaborate was I didn't see it explicitly called out, but I assume that it's in there. Just want to continue to encourage that.
Thank you. Yeah, great point. Director Brooks, Vanessa, were you going to say something? Okay. Director Brooks.
So really quickly, as one of the, it came up a couple of times in the presentation, student voice. And I know there is a long list of ways that we need to get students more involved and vocal in their experiences in our schools. But as the Brooklyn Bridge liaison, I felt obligated to promote and ask the board to consider getting students involved on our board, our school board, as well as many of the other committees that are in the district, from RISE to DPAC and all of the others. So that's a discussion that still needs to be had, and I really hope that we can push that forward and make it happen to get a student liaison on the board. But yeah, I just wanted to comment on that, and I appreciated that being highlighted in the presentation today as well.
Yeah, I know that's something that we've been talking about for a while. Sorry, Craig, you were going to say something?
It's on the to-do list.
It's
Trust
on the
me.
exactly, yeah.
Trust me, we've had a lot of, the list has been a little long lately, but that is something, I guess what I'll, getting to that point, Director Brooks, thank you for bringing it up. Board members, if you go way back to when I interviewed for this job and you asked all the candidates to present on community engagement back in February, I think it was January, February, we had like the polar vortex back then too, but 2019. And then by the time I started in July of about a year and a half ago. So we had some progress made last year. And then, conceptually, we really, what you saw tonight was intentional. First, we had to build a team. We had to get resources first, then build the team, then build the model and identify practices, clarify roles. And now we're getting into how do we get parent voice, student voice, and then some measures to go along with it as what's our cycle of improvement. So we'll continue to bring this back as another monitoring report. You can see how much progress has been made just since the last presentation before, and I do want to echo what Michael Lehan said about the involvement of Brian Severson Hall and others, because it really does take a cross-department approach. So you really directed me as I started to build this, and we've had a few distractions along the way with some health and safety challenges in operations, but as we've gone through all the work with COVID, we've not lost sight of this. And I want to commend Michael and the team and others, and great work, Vanessa and Kevon, for your teamwork and laying out a sound model that we've developed, and now it's time to implement. So we're really excited, and I sense everyone's excitement with this as well. So we've finally kind of gotten to that point where we're now going to get some true action and results to come from those efforts.
Superintendent McIntyre, if I may add, just for real quickly, before you, as part of the FACE team, you're also seeing another element of our strategic plan, being that Kevon was a graduate of Osseo Senior High School. I won't tell you the year, but she was a graduate. So recruiting and retention, there we go.
That's awesome. Anybody else have anything? I feel like this is one of those topics where we could always like, oh, what about this?
Yeah.
What about this? So thank you so much for your presentation tonight.
And Director Brooks, one last comment. We'll take some time to look at different models of student involvement on boards because there are some different ways to do that, and we really want to be thoughtful and intentional, just like this with this model here, doing that so it's a sustainable way that really is authentic. So it is clearly one of the next steps for us to really tackle as well. Great job, team. Thank you very much for your time tonight. We'll be bringing you back soon, so keep us up to date. All right, Chair Dawson-Walton, I think I'll just move us to the next agenda item.
Yep.
I don't know if anyone needs a break. I think we're on a good roll here. We'll just keep moving. So with that, I'm going to kind of tee it up again here for Michael Lehan. It's, a lot of nights it's the Ron Meyer show, but tonight it's the Michael Lehan show. So we'll keep going with this. I'm really excited about Michael and really the team members you'll hear from tonight and how you've heard about Pbis in the past. But this year's really presented us with new opportunities, some challenges clearly, but new opportunities to really, how do we make this an effective model moving forward? So I'm excited for you to hear about this tonight. So Michael, I'll turn it over to you to introduce your team.
Thank you, Superintendent McIntyre. The team tonight will share about the Positive Behavior Intervention and Support, known as PBIS, and serving as champions as we work to identify and work to respond to the vast realities our scholars bring to our buildings. They have shown the aptitude to be innovative, responsive, and resourceful as we embrace our current reality. An African proverb states, "It takes a village to raise a child." I introduce to you part of our village and the impactful ways they are taking action to co-create with our community.
Thank you so much, Michael. I am Amy Janicek, the district level principal, and I'm very excited to be sharing information about positive behavior intervention supports with all of you board members as well as Superintendent McIntyre. So thank you for having us this evening. The outcome obviously is to share with you a little bit more about an update on the work of PBIS and for this particular year. So as some of you may not be as familiar with PBIS because you are new to the board. And so just to give you a little bit of grounding, and then we're going to have an opportunity to hear from two of our different amazing leaders in our system who will really get to show you what PBIS looks like in practical application of what this framework really is. So positive behavior interventions and supports is truly an evidence-based framework, which is meant to improve our data, systems, and practices that are affecting our student outcomes. It is also a system to develop proactive supports to reinforce behaviors, positive behaviors that we're looking for, and really preventing those unwanted behaviors from our students. And it is also really a commitment for establishing positive classroom and school culture across the entire school building. And the way you go about that is from the core features that I've identified on this particular slide. So every site across the district has a PBIS site team. And as you know, this is something that has become standard work within our district because PBIS has been in place for a few years. Additionally, that team is really working to get buy-in from staff so they can truly understand the why and building that positive culture within staff so that is evident with our students as well. The purpose of the team is to work with stakeholders and to create school-wide expectations. So really identifying those positive ways that we want to show up and be in school community together. And again, you'll hear a little bit more specifically about what some of those school-wide expectations look like when you hear from some of our other schools shortly. The work really is also about behavioral instruction. So we don't want to make any assumptions that our students know how they should behave when they're coming into a school building. And it's really important that we as adults recognize that it is our work to help teach students and not just to make assumptions that they know what our expectations are all about. So it's really also about helping to build up our students and to teach them the skills. And with that, it's so important to recognize our students for the wonderful things that they are doing. And without a PBIS framework, that is often lost. And so it's really a way to celebrate our students and celebrate the success from an individual level. If a student is really struggling and they're having a great week, how do we really celebrate that student? To an entire school building that's really come together around positive school culture and celebrate the work that's been done. The key to all of this, of course, is consistent implementation. And so this is something that is our ongoing work of what are the things that we are doing well at our sites, and then what are areas to continue to improve to ensure that we have fidelity of implementation. Each of the sites really works on an action plan and has goal setting. They are meeting ongoing as a site team, and that really is also supported by professional development. So we ask our PBS site leads to come together, and our district team meets with them probably, I'd say, about 5 to 6 times throughout the year to provide professional development, have opportunities for collaboration across the sites to understand what is working well, and what can we continue to improve upon, and what can we learn from one another. And Director Brooks, I heard you mention earlier about elevating student voice. And that was something that was one of the things that we highlighted through our professional development this year with the site teams, is really asking them to think about how are we ensuring that our students are engaged and how are we elevating student voice through the PBIS team. And finally, it's really thinking about what are those classroom systems and routines. So ensuring that there is consistency, that as students move throughout our building, move from classroom to classroom, it is not a guess or it's not a surprise, but yet we have some clarity as building staff to say this is what we are wanting to teach our students around classroom systems and routines. And so this is something that we do not do to kids, we do with kids and in partnership with our scholars and with an equity lens. And of course, this is something that is ever evolving. So as we think about all of this, all of this system, I want you to keep in mind that within this system, it is really about these individual scholars that have tremendous amount of brilliance, that we want to tap into that brilliance and help them be successful within our system. So all of the pieces that we talk about really are meant to help each individual student. So with that, I want to introduce 2 of our amazing site leaders that are going to talk more specifically about their impact with PBIS and how that's had an impact on our scholars. And so Ethan Naredales, who is the coordinator of Indian education, who you heard speak a little bit earlier, as well as Ryan Bisson, who is the elementary assistant principal for our Distant Learning Academy.
Thanks, Amy. Good evening, everyone. I'm Ethan Naredales, the coordinator of our Indian education program. And this evening, I just wanted to introduce our Native Voices PBIS program. I think we could go on to the next slide. This is our inaugural year of implementing the PBIS Native Voice program, not only within Osseo, but across the state. Our district is participating in a cohort with about 7 other districts around the state, mostly closer to reservations and Duluth. We're kind of the only urban or suburban area district that's participating in this cohort. And we've been able to gather a lot of meaningful input through stakeholder surveys, starting in spring 2020, through stakeholder surveys to our parents, our students, teachers that serve our students, as well as administrators within the schools that serve our scholars. At the start of this year, we had 413 Indigenous students within Osseo area schools participating. Today, that number is closer to 475, as we've had students join the district and just be better identified through the enrollment process. And really, this is based on some of the PBIS work that's already been done, but also it's looking at how we can indigenize this, how we can really center this around the work we already do in Indian education to provide a solid foundation for student success based on understanding who they are, where they come from, and really having a buy-in into their educational opportunities for our Indigenous scholars. So this ties very nicely with our Check and Connect program, as well as our American Indian Attendance Initiative, and was kind of created as a way to have our Indigenous scholars create localized community-led cohorts where there's an accountability piece among students in the same school that are also participating in our Indian education programming, a way they can check on each other, and also another way that our students can be recognized for youth leadership, Indigenous leadership, or values that align with cultural values or our district values and goals. So our students are exposed to the values of Ojibwe and Dakota people, and how do those align with our district's mission statement, and how can we get that student buy-in from our Indigenous scholars who we often see heavily impacted by the various symptoms of oppression within the system that we operate from. This has also been, the key piece to this was centering community voice. As mentioned, it's really getting the input from our students, from our parents, from our community, and seeing what they find to be the most responsive and most useful tools from the Pbis framework. We've created an online portal for our students to be rewarded with kind of a digital currency per se, where they can redeem their points for various cultural prizes that, again, encourage this cultural buy-in where they see themselves reflected not only in the school culture, but in the curriculum and within the opportunities afforded to them. This has also been a key part of our Indian homeschool liaison training. The Indian Ed team has been trained as Indian homeschool liaisons and what that role means in really building community with our parents, but also in collaborating with our student services team. So this has been really tremendous work. It's been difficult during this COVID year, but we're excited to see how this can move forward when we return to in-person learning, and how this can grow so that the students are recognized not only by the Indian education staff or student services staff, but by the everyday teachers and administrators in their buildings. So we hope to build on this work and really inform the greater Osseo area schools community about how we can expand this work to all students. We see this work affecting the attendance data, the graduation rates, as well as our student engagement data around Schoology and Seesaw. And so it's really been a great way to measure student engagement in a different way than the traditional data points that we pull from accountability and research department. So this has allowed us to really look at a community-wide survey of our American Indian students and families and really be responsive to their needs. We're excited to have this work continue to grow in the coming school year. And that's all I have for this evening. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me tonight to share all of the successes of the Distance Learning Academy. I'm Ryan Bisson, as Amy said, one of the assistant principals. So just to set a little bit of the groundwork, 2 weeks before school started, the admin team and the staff all got together for the first time to welcome each other, and coming from 17 elementary schools, 140 plus staff, preparing to welcome over 2,400 students. So as we thought about the Pbis work and when we were ready to get started with it, something that was very important to us and that I hope that you see throughout the presentation is bringing together all of the brilliance and hard work of the 17 elementary Pbis teams and staff engagement. So to get started, we wanted to lean into what was successful at all of the 17 elementary sites. So we started with a staff survey. What are the top 10 values that you would like to bring to the DLA? So you'll see that word cloud there, all of the words that came up. Then we also asked who wanted to participate on our Pbis team. So we have a social worker, ML team leads, we have staff from our special education teams, we have grade level teams, counselors, and admin. From there, we asked parents, here are the top 10 values we recognize as what we want to focus on in the DLA this year, but where is the parent voice and what are we missing? Did we capture everything that you feel is important to support your scholar this year? And then finally, bringing some of that language to our students and asking students, what do you need as supports in the Distance Learning Academy this year? Then, very exciting, we had a mascot, and I actually brought Leo with me. So here's Leo to say hello. So we used the Osseo Area Learning Center mascot, and the scholars got to name the lion, so Leo the lion, and Leo the lion is all around the Distance Learning Academy, and you'll see a little more about Leo coming up. So from our student voice, we came up with this acronym. At the DLA, we rock. And ROCK stands for we respect everyone, we own our actions, we care for others, and we keep trying. And that student-friendly language really came from the staff and parent values, which were perseverance and respect and responsibility. Having never done this in an online environment before, as Amy talked about, we use Pbis in a site to, talk about what does it look like to walk down the hallway? What does my body look like? What does my voice look like? Well, in an online environment, what does it look like to respect everyone when you're in a Google Meet? Or how do I own my actions when I'm at home learning from my teacher? So this is the work that the Pbis team put together to really call that out for our students as we were creating our own Pbis framework for an online learning environment. Next, how do you share this out with 140 plus staff through Seesaw, through Google Meets? So part of our teamwork was to put together this slide deck that we call the weekly Pbis package with links to a morning announcement. Every morning I have a welcome to school morning announcement with what's happening for the week and shout outs. Our counselors put together a weekly counselor corner that help us focus on our DLA rocks. So for example, in this week, we were focused on what does it look like to care for each other. We also include discussion starters so that at morning meeting or afternoon meeting, classes can connect and build relationship and community with each other as we're pulling together, again, 17 elementary schools, and a lot of these scholars are meeting for the very first time. One of the most popular events in the Monday morning message is an activity called Where is Leo? Recognizing that all of our students have not been at their home sites for a while, and again, this is a brand new community, we really wanted to capitalize on highlighting all of the 17 elementaries that all of our students are coming from, and really honor their connection and help them to stay connected to their home sites and have home site pride. So every Monday, I share a picture just like this in our morning message, and it's where is Leo this week? It's myself and Leo and some other scholars on something that might stand out to a student, something from a home site on the playground, or something very special and unique we like to highlight. And then throughout the week, teachers share clues. So it might be, again, maybe a special program like this school really gets into science, or we share a clue about a mascot. And then we also start to highlight on this map where we visited throughout the year. So we're on week 7 now of our 17 elementary schools. We also focus on scholar and staff recognition. We have a weekly newsletter that parents and staff submit a recognition, and we share out how they are rocking it in the DLA, full of gratitude for staff. Our community has been amazing supporting them. We also have a Facebook page where we share shout outs and highlights of what's happening in our school. And then again, shout outs in our weekly morning message. One thing that's been really exciting is the addition of buddy classrooms, more social opportunities and ways to build community, not only within a grade level. Many of our grade levels have section numbers up to 18. That itself is the size of an elementary school. So seeking ways to really build community among a grade level, and then also vertically. So one of our kindergarten and fifth grade teachers got together and hosted a National African American Parent Involvement Day, and got together in a Google Meet, both classrooms. Parents were invited to share music and culture. It was a beautiful experience for all involved. And then another example of our first grade classrooms get together and have competitions. How many minutes can you read this week? And then get together and celebrate. We also have mystery readers where Kristen Hauge, the co-lead principal of the DLA, brings Leo along to mystery read in classrooms. And then as we continue our work with PBIS in trimester 3, we will continue to seek out and include more student voice, specifically in the morning message, and thinking about our fifth graders as they have leadership opportunities in their home elementary site, finding ways that our fifth graders can continue to have those leadership responsibilities and having student voice in the morning message. Something we're also very mindful of is continuing to help our scholars connect to their home sites, particularly as we are building the DLA, we are also dismantling the DLA and helping our students and scholars transition back to their home sites. And then just continue to celebrate their brilliance and their perseverance and everything that they're accomplishing in this brand new online environment by showcasing their successes. And here's just an example of the daily email that I get from students, whether it's drawings of Leo, classrooms getting together and using math shapes to make Leo. One of our third grade classrooms made us a school song. This PBIS work was really missing, and we could all feel it in the beginning, and it's really helped us to stay positive and build community in the DLA. Thank you.
So school board members, Board Chair Dawson Walton, and board members, as you can see, we wanted to show you how PBIS, the work of positive behavior interventions and supports, looks in two completely different environments, two that have hadn't existed before this year. And we thought that you would be interested in hearing about those. But know that the work of positive behavior interventions and supports, providing that goes on at all of our sites. And what Amy talked at the beginning are all of the core features that we're expecting and implementing with fidelity across all of our sites. I think when Ryan said they noticed it was missing, it isn't, PBIS is not a do first, second, third. It is more of a general roadmap of listening to your communities, making sure that you're stating your behavior expectations in positive ways, making sure that your community has input into those, because just because I say something doesn't mean that you would have those same understandings of that. So across our system, we are implementing positive behavior interventions and supports. And thank you so much for allowing us the opportunity to share with you two unique ways that is playing out in our system. Thank you.
Now I couldn't find the mute button. Thank you so much. Okay, we'll start with board member questions or comments. We'll start with Director Mosqueda Jones this time.
Thank you for the very thorough presentation and for the examples. I think you really captured how if PBS is done right, it's more of a way to build community culture of a school. So I appreciate that. I'm just kind of curious about when you're working with PBIS, and I know that some schools are working with restorative justice and trauma-informed. How do you see all of that kind of fitting together, you know, especially like maybe Ethan and Ryan, if you have examples of that, and Kate, if you know of any other schools on how that's working.
So Ethan, would you like to go first, and then Ryan, and then I think Jill can field this as well.
Yes, thank
Certainly.
you.
Yeah, the native PBIS work really overlaps well with another project we've been a part of, the Project Dreamcatcher, which seeks to address the overrepresentation of Native students in special ed, specifically around EBD, and just how students are identified, as well as the IEP process. And the PBIS work has been, well, it's really not only trauma informed, but it's really grounded in Indigenous lifeways. So it's, offering this cultural rooting that our students aren't getting in the school system. They may not be getting at home due to the ongoing colonization and omnicide that's taking place in Indigenous homelands. And so it's really providing this cultural framework for success in both worlds, in the Indigenous world as well as in the mainstream culture. And there's a plethora of data around Indian country showing that when students are educated in their language and cultural lifeways, they not only excel in academics, but in sports and really all measures of success that we use within the school system and higher ed. And so it's really not trauma informed, but lifeway informed, which I think can be more powerful because it's addressing something in a positive way rather than a deficit. So we're looking at what these students are bringing to the community, what their families bringing to the community, and how we can enhance and enrich that.
Thank you.
Are you done, Jackie? Oh,
Ryan.
sorry,
Ryan's-
I'm sorry.
No,
Yeah,
that's
sorry.
okay.
Sorry.
You did a great job. I didn't really need to add much, but just I see such a strong intersectionality between the restorative practice and PBIS, and connected to what Ethan was saying. This PBIS work is really the foundation, and it's in its name, the framework for how do we get ahead of having common language and all of us grounding on the same norms, and those norms, as quickly as they were built this year, those norms that are built in a PBIS framework in a building, it's a big process with a lot of stakeholder feedback. So there's a very strong overlap of both of those efforts.
I think I'll just, good evening. I think I'll just kind of bounce off of what Ryan said, but I do see like an overlay of the trauma-informed practices with the restorative, with the PBIS. They all kind of just really mesh well together and complement one another. Restorative practices we've been working on for a long time in this district. We currently have community mediation restorative services at all of our secondary sites, and they are restorative practice practitioner that we partner with. And we also have Hanette Arafat, who you heard during our mental health presentation, and she is working with both Crestview Elementary currently and Maple Grove Middle School. So we continue to have our community partners support the work and move it forward, as well as continue to provide professional development around all three areas. So we're keeping the work moving forward.
Yeah, I'm just really excited. I think sometimes in practice, I see a lot of PBIS being one big sticker chart reward type of program rather than a comprehensive way of working together as communities. So I just want to highlight the importance of the student voice and the parent voice in the cultural aspects of the American Indian PBIS. That's why I was very excited about it earlier, on how that can truly work together to be much better overall for everyone. So thank you.
Oh my gosh, this mute button. Sorry. Okay, Director Douglas.
Thank you. I don't have any questions. I appreciate the presentation here. This has always been an area that I've been really passionate about, and I love to see our work continue in this area. PBIS, I think, is one of the defining elements that helps us guide our students towards success. And so I'm really excited to see how it's been implemented in DLA, because I really didn't have any idea how that would work in a virtual environment. You know, I have a high schooler. This is just anecdotal. You know, she went to Basswood Elementary, and she still talks about the Basswood Bs. Right? These things are really valuable life lessons, right? That we're teaching them, that carry through as they graduate into middle school and high school, and we're teaching them how to be good community citizens and how to be good peers and students, and these positive ways of doing that have a lasting impact and shape our community in a really incredible way. So I'm just really excited to see how it's really come full circle with the DLA and how it's being implemented for those kids, so that they're not missing out on that really crucial piece. So I just really appreciate that piece of information. Thank you.
Yeah, Heather Asha still does the Basswood Bees too. She that's funny. Okay, Director Simons.
Yeah, I took a ton of notes, and this is really exciting. I guess I love the work with the Ethan with the Native Voices cohort. I think that's such an incredible expression of how each of our unique cultures demonstrate shared values in different ways. So I love that it's bringing us together under things that we share in common, but also how we express them differently and how it means things differently to different cultures, and how we're tapping into that to really take the lead on how students express themselves at school and in the classroom. So I immediately thought, like, kind of connected that with the presentation for DLA and the ROC. Like, when we think about respect or own our actions or care for others or keep trying, that may look different. It may. I think of myself as a Mexican American, and how those particular 4 items might be demonstrated in certain ways for me in my culture, and just that I share those values with others, but it may look a little different, or it just may have a little bit difference in how it connects with me and how I express that to other people. So I just, those are things that connect for me. And then secondly, with the DLA, I love the Leo the Lion being at different places, and just, I love this opportunity in DLA for students to be exposed outside their boundary areas. I think this is such a unique opportunity to capitalize on that and create friendships and understanding that a normal brick and mortar environment may not allow. And so I'm just thinking, now, how do we take that and carry that forward? What do we learn from that? How do we build that out in the brick and mortar as well? And it made me think about Northview, and when you walk in, there's a map of where all of the different pins are from where students come from, but they're all there together. And so these are just incredible insights and lessons that I think we can take forward and incorporate into all of the work that we do in this space. So just super exciting, and let's keep the wheels turning on how we apply this and throughout everything that we do in the district. So thank you so much. It's really great work.
Awesome. Director Brooks.
So I have one question for Ethan, and then a comment for Ryan after. So Ethan, in your presentation, you mentioned the Native PBIS work having a positive impact, or potentially having a positive impact on attendance. I was wondering if you could maybe speak a little more about that, and how that, well, one, if you could maybe elaborate a little more on the positive impact on attendance, and then also how it links to the strategy that was listed earlier from Rev.
Yeah, certainly. Primarily, We didn't plan for that to be the initial data piece that this would collect, but in planning this in the start of the distance learning experience, we were able to look at the student use data on Seesaw and Schoology, which I guess would be attendance data in the distance learning piece, and then comparing that over 2020 to what we're experiencing for trimester 1 and trimester 2 right now. And where we're seeing the real turnaround is at those important transitions from middle school to high school and from elementary school to middle school. That's where a lot of our students kind of seem to have a disconnect with their educational experience, where they don't see themselves reflected. They're starting to be more heavily influenced by their peers and not having that cultural grounding, especially when we don't see ourselves in everyday community. Indigenous people are just generally invisible. Even when we look at school district data, we're statistically such a small amount that we're often not reported on. And so it's often difficult to find meaningful, accurate data to show this. But with our high school students and our middle school students, we're able to see that they're actually checking in to their programming more, because they're understanding they'll be rewarded not only for attendance, for good grades, or something that a teacher saw positive in the class, but also for these cultural values. So we've been doing these Friday hangouts. Even though the students are off on Fridays, they're attending these Friday hangouts where they're kind of working with a local cohort within about 4 or 5 years of their own, and they're just sharing experiences within school. And we'll put up different values, and we have a jam board where the students all kind of share together what that value means to them. And it's all student led. And what's really great is in our Pbis program, we don't differentiate for the young students or the high schoolers. So we might have elementary students with their older brother or sister. And a lot of the times these young students are the ones that don't have this shy attitude, and they're the loudest voices, and they become the leaders. So it's creating these alternative leadership opportunities for our students that they may not get in the classroom, where it's kind of more top down, where the teacher's talking at them or teaching at them. But this is really centering the student voice, like what's important to you. And in a sense, the distance learning has been a blessing in disguise, because we're able to see the students at home. And so we can do these cultural share and tells and kind of get more insight from the student in a comfortable situation where they're not feeling judged. So it's been really interesting to see our students are more engaged in Seesaw. They're engaging in Schoology more. They're checking their Gmail more often. There's not a uniform measure that's used at all sites, but we've been really proactive in ensuring that Seesaw and Schoology data is reflected with the Pbis work. And so we haven't seen all the students engage in the Pbis work, but that's what we're hoping to do with next year, is expand this to all of our Native scholars across all sites and really build this out so our parents are well informed at the start of the school year.
Thank you. It kind of piggybacks off of Tanya or Director Simon's comments, that in a comment that you actually just made, Ethan, that DLA has sort of been a blessing in disguise, and has, I think, really forced us to be forward-thinking and creative in how we approach engaging with our students and families, and particularly positive behavior interventions. So, so Ryan, one of the things that one of the slides that I think really stuck out to me was, I think it's the at DLA We Rock slide that kind of goes through the sort of the ground rules. And, as we're looking forward and our entire district is becoming more virtual, I think those ground rules, could be applied as a model to any of our schools. And so I just wanted to highlight that, and also highlight all of the work that your team has done to really get DLA up and running so quickly. Also incorporating, this Pbis work, which is, in addition to just setting up the structure of DLA in such a quick fashion. So just wanted to highlight that, and just in general, for both of you, a lot of the work that you're doing actually needs to be applied to the rest of the district. And I hope that we are carefully tracking and measuring what is working in DLA and what could potentially work outside of DLA and our traditional programs, and really working to sort of integrate some of those lessons learned, into the rest of the district. So that's all I have, but thank you all.
Thank you, Director Grady.
Well, thank you all for your thoughtful work in supporting our students in a positive way rather than a punitive way. I think that really increases our student engagement, happiness all together. And while positive reinforcement is the hard work, I really think it's the best work to move us forward and treating each of our students the way that they need to be treated. I am thinking a lot about the trial for the killing of George Floyd right now, and I'm wondering how the PBIS system will inform our understanding of the potential trauma that our students and families may be feeling already and may feel as the trial moves forward.
So Michael, you might want to jump in on this as well, but I believe that the response of the system is the responsibility of the system and not just one particular point of view from or not one particular thing like PBIS. So Corey sent out a message to the system, and the I'm going to get this wrong, Rev's newsletter from his team also sent out, and I'm sure you see that as board members, sent out some things, plus a lot of resources along with that. And we have social workers, counselors, we have CMRS, we have supports in our virtual and in our buildings for students that are impacted, and bringing that to the site, or for any family that needs that, because I know that this is being taped or televised or whatever it is, so that they know that if they are struggling in any way, that they feel like a school person, a social worker, or a counselor, a student assistance counselor, one of our mental health therapists can help, that we certainly have resources in our sites to deal with that. But every site, and Michael, maybe this is where you want to take over, is every principal at every site is keeping the pulse of their site and knowing that this is going, I mean, we're not blind and deaf and stupid. So we know that this is going on, and it's going to have an impact on our people, and principals are well aware of that, and we're providing district support for that. Michael, do you have something to add, or did I capture it?
Yeah, I thought you did a wonderful job. Thanks, Kate. I think central to our work is honoring the humanity around us. And so we know that Kelly and Steve, who oversee the building principals, they've already had meetings and they've talked about different strategies, what's coming up. So they have a pulse for it. They've gone over kind of what has been done in the past when it emerged last summer, how we're being responsive. And we also know that we're coming towards the end of the school year. And we know that we have seniors that have gone through a year of COVID. And so how can we mitigate? Well, how can we partner with them to make sure that their success is not limited by some of the extra activity that's going on. So I know that Steve and Kelly are doing a really good job there. And then I would also invite Gill, if she wants to speak about anything. We've partnered with CMRS as well regarding circles. And then also we are looking at doing some affinity spaces through the equity department as well.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Actually, I'm going to turn this one over to Amy. We are partnering with CMRS to see what they can offer our scholars and our staff. But she actually jumped on the meeting this afternoon with them. So if you don't mind, Ms. Janicek.
Yeah, that's a really timely question, Director Grady. I think at the in our directors and assistant superintendent team, we are wanting to make sure that we are providing support for our buildings, and also know that when I talked with CMRS today, they talked about this idea of sustainability, because this is not something that is only going to happen this week or next week, but we know that this is going to go on for a long time. So how are we looking to our sites to really have a pulse on the building, but then also they are wonderful in recognizing that we are going to have to be flexible because each site may have different needs, just what is emerging within their community. So it's they're an incredible resource with a lot of talented staff, but they also encouraged us to make sure that we are building on our established relationships at our sites, because those authentic conversations are truly going to come from those adults that that our students feel comfortable talking with. And so, you know, we are reaching out to the sites to just have a quick check-in, you know, and find out what are they hearing, what are needs, and so that we can continue to be responsive and supportive just during the duration, which is, you know, for the next several months, as I would anticipate.
Thank you so much for answering that and all the thoughtful planning and meetings that you're doing in order to make sure we address those needs and becoming flexible to address whatever those needs are at whichever site for whichever student.
Thank you. Well, this is really encouraging. You know, and it's so awesome to just hear about everything that's happening, because we don't always get to, you know, hear about all of this good work and the creative work and really impactful work. My one question, I'm just really intrigued by the PBIS kind of focus on the Native community as students. I think last year when we had a presentation, I had asked about if PBIS, if that the tool that we have with it, if that's something that is, you know, culturally competent or based in cultural competency, and so it's really exciting to see the focus, the cohort that MDA has put forth with the Native community. Are there other cohorts like that with MDE for PBIS? Do anybody know?
Not that I'm aware of, but I only know about our one. But
Yeah.
I know there's been discussions about expanding it for other groups that have been heavily impacted.
Okay.
Yeah, I know that when we first presented to the school board, so this is my 10th year at the district, and I think my 9th year with the work of PBIS. And if we could fly back 9 years and have that presentation with the board at that time, and then what we are doing today, worlds different. And because, like we said, it's ever evolving. And I think MDE is also evolving with us. So they have a great interest in the work that Ethan is doing, because that's going to inform the state. So I am not as familiar with other groups. I know, I don't think, you know, like, let me just cut to the chase. I don't think so at this point. I think that they are always willing. There's Metro Exus that are always exploring it, and I know they're exploring it, but they have not settled anywhere at this time.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems I mean, that's the intentionality we need it's going to actually move the dial and make a difference. So I think it's great. So I'm hopeful, and I know, Michael, you said about, you know, connecting with the affinity groups. I think you made a comment like that just a little bit ago. So that's all we have. Does anybody else have any other questions before we hand it over to Corey for his final comments? No? All right, Corey, go ahead.
I just had to jump in on this topic. It's near and dear to my heart as a prior school psychologist living in this world. And please know how much recognition we have been receiving the last couple of years from MDE for our efforts. And I want to thank our team one more time, you know, for the hard work that we have put in over the years. Typically, this presentation is really focused on data, right? And really specifically on how we're trying to reduce discipline referrals. So tonight was a different approach and a glimpse into how we're doing this work through examples, right? What it looks like, and especially in a new way this year. And thanks to Ethan's work and others, you know, our MDE Tribal Nations Education Committee, or TNIC, commended us on this work when we recently had our meeting with them, and they really applauded our efforts in leading it with our Indigenous students throughout the state. So that's just a couple comments there. I also wanted to point out we have lots of conversations about social emotional learning, and this is clearly an intersection with SEL work. You think of the strategies that can be taught within this framework, right? And the strong alignment with restorative practices and trauma-informed practices and mental health that we've really been focused on the last few months. So the big takeaway is just how we're trying to be really intentional about teaching behavioral skills, just like we teach academic skills and the importance of the rigor that goes with it. And think of this PBIS system as a bit of a core instruction. Just like we have core instruction in reading and math, we have core instruction around expectations for all students, and then we layer over the interventions that we need to add in along the way. And if you think of it through our tiered system of supports that we often talk about, so this has a strong connection to that SEL work that we're doing. And I just want to applaud our team one more time for the efforts. And Director Brooks, thanks for pointing out how quickly this was built, at both the elementary, middle school, and high school levels, and really launched us into a space of how to do things differently. So I appreciate Ryan's presentation on how we got innovative with how to do this work. So grateful for everyone's efforts. So just to maybe Chair Dawson Walton, to wrap things up tonight, just kind of review real quick. You have received updates on our progress and the work in front of us, right, to do with our Indigenous students from our APAC team. And there's a list of specific follow-up items for me and for the administration to follow up on that we'll be doing for you. You received an update on our goals and strategies and budget for our Achievement and Integration Plan. And then you got a monitoring report, and I'm going to say this carefully, from our Family and Community Department. We have a department now, so that's been a long time coming, and their plan moving forward. So that's a big step, and I'm grateful for the work they have put in so far already, and we're on a great trajectory there. And then lastly, the monitoring report on positive behavior interventions and support. So a lot of key work for tonight, and I'm thankful, board members, for your very thoughtful questions, very insightful questions, your feedback and direction for us on tonight's topics as we'll continue to bring them forward. I'm hearing from you maybe more frequency and monitoring reports on a couple of these topics. So I'll continually update our board calendar and continue to share that back with you as we move forward. So I think with that, unless there's any other questions, I'll turn it back to you, Chair Dawson Walton, to wrap up.
All right. Well, thank you to everyone, our presenters tonight. I mean, it was a really uplifting work session tonight to see all the good work that's been happening. So with that, this work session is adjourned at 8:32 p.m. Have a great night, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.